guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mona. I'm a photographer, and today I'm going to be talking about my photography journey. So last week marked officially 3 years of me being a photographer. Let me find the exact date. Ooh, why? This is so sentimental. Okay, July 13th, 2021. And that was, we'll get into that later, but July 13th, 2021 was my official start of photography. So growing up, I grew up like in middle school, high school, like during that, mainly middle school, that like Tumblr era. And I remember around that era when Tumblr was really popular, I would always like look at different photo shoots that would go viral on there. And I think that started my like appreciation for photography. I always liked consuming it, but I never really thought that I would be doing it or should do it. I just kind of always appreciated the art form. And then in high school, I was on the yearbook staff, and that involved photography, but like that wasn't like real photography. Like we shot on auto. We just like kind of, well, I shouldn't say it wasn't real photography. It was more heavy on like reporting and writing than the actual like art or craft. So fast forward to college, right before my senior year. So this was the summer after junior year, about to go to my senior year. One of my friends was having a birthday trip in Cancun. So first time going out the country, like as an adult, with just friends, no family, no mom, nothing. And I remember I really wanted to take really good pictures in Cancun. So I was like, I'm gonna buy a camera. And at that time I had this internship. I had a little bit of pocket money. So I was looking on Facebook Marketplace, just researching. No, I'm lying. I had really wanted to make like a cute vlog of the trip, not like a daily vlog, like narrating, but just like a cute aesthetic video with music in the background. So I was like, I need a camera. So I was on YouTube, was looking at this one user's videos, like she does like lifestyle vlogs. What camera is that? I kept looking, and I finally found out that the videographer, was using a Leica Q2. So I looked up the prices of the Leica Q2, and it was way out of my price range at that time. Even today, I could not afford that camera. So I remember I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? So I kept looking for different alternatives, and I found a Leica Deluxe 7. That was still pretty expensive, especially for someone who, like, I don't do this for a living. I don't really make money off of it. It would have just been like for a trip that I was buying the camera for. So I went on Facebook, found the camera. Leica, I feel like, is a popular brand, like, but it's popular for people who are actually into photography. Like if you see someone on the street who just casually likes taking pictures, or they just own a camera, most of the time they'll have like a Nikon or Sony, Canon, but like most people don't know about Leica. So to me, it was a new brand. I'd never heard of it before. So I found the Leica Deluxe 7. They were selling like the whole kit, had everything, had multiple flashes, camera strap. I'm pretty sure like a little bag that came with it. And so I was like, okay, perfect. And I think at the time, he was selling it for around $950 to $1,000, the man who had posted the Facebook ad. So I really wanted the camera, but I was like, I had $1,000, but I'm like, I can't spend $1,000 on a camera. Like that'd be like all the money I had. So I bargained with him, and we agreed on $800. So I met him at his apartment, like outside, picked up the camera, boom. I was ready. Then we're getting ready to go on the trip. I'm buying all this stuff, and I'm like, let's say, like, my intention was to take the video vlog. And so I figured out how to use the whole video setup on the camera. Everything looked great. And I was like, oh, I should also just like take pictures on here. So I started researching a little bit about photography, like shooting in manual a little bit. And so I just was playing around with it. And I think since I didn't come with the intention of wanting to learn photography from the jump, learning manual was a little bit easier for me, because there wasn't all this pressure, if that makes sense. Like I'm pretty sure not the whole trip, but a lot of the trip I shot in manual. A little bit I shot in manual. I think mostly auto, and I dabbled in manual, but I did shoot in RAW. That's something that I had looked up, like, and some YouTube videos said always shoot in RAW, so I always shot in RAW. We got to Cancun. I took a few videos, but honestly, I never even ended up making that vlog that I had intended to make. So I was like, okay, I spent all this money on the camera to make the vlog. I didn't even make the vlog, but I was taking pictures of me and my friends, and I'll insert some pictures here. And I really loved the quality of the camera, and it was just kind of like a step up from the iPhone back. So as I was saying, at that time, people really weren't. So I always joke around with my friends and say like I'm like always ahead of the curve, or like I always catch on to trends sooner. But really, honestly, at that time, people weren't using digital cameras to take Instagram photos. Like people were just using iPhones. And I feel like now the everyday person who's not even really into photography or photography, like you have a little digital camera, people are getting the vintage ones, people are getting more modern ones like the Sony, not Sony, Canon G7X, and people use the Sony. There's another Sony that's like the equivalent of the G7X that people are using just for regular Instagram photos, or like not even Instagram, just for memories instead of the iPhone photos. So I feel like that's kind of what I was doing back then, unintentionally, when I got the camera, especially in Cancun during that time. I remember coming back home and I was like, okay, well, just spent a ton of money. $800 as a college student is a lot of money on camera. So I might as well, try to learn photography. I had fun with the camera in Cancun. Let me just try to, do it for fun. And so I really wanted to, like, at the time also, I wanted to kind of pick something up where I could like just really master something. And I didn't know what that would be. And so it just kind of all fell together. So then I got on YouTube and I started just watching videos how to shoot manual. I started off with, I remember, aperture, because I really liked that blurry background. So I was trying to like figure out how to get that blurry bokeh, how to get everything solid, like what's the difference. And so the first like few, honestly, year, but especially during that time, I'll focus on, that was probably what, July, like it was YouTube heavy. I was really watching Ian Hippolyta, Jessica Kobasi, Anita Sadowska, Julia, I think Trotty's her name. Like there were so many people who I was watching on YouTube. A lot of, and Manny Ortiz, he shoots a lot of Sony. So I was just watching that, like obsessively watching hours on hours of YouTube content, and then just like taking like random objects in my house and seeing if I could like actually apply the concepts with like depth of field, certain composition techniques, and just all of that. And so then I was like, okay, now's the time. I've done some education. I want to actually like shoot people. Like I really wanted to do portraits, and I wanted to kind of recreate in my mind those old Tumblr photo shoots that I was obsessed with. I mean, they weren't really Tumblr photo shoots. They were like editorial magazine photo shoots that would just circulate on Tumblr back when I was in like middle school. So I was like, that's the kind of photography I want to produce. And so I went on Peerspace. I found this photography studio, and it was at this guy's house. His name was Cyan. He's a photographer in my city, and I hadn't seen his work or anything. I only found him through Peerspace. So I was like, okay, got the studio, check. Got my camera, check. Was watching the videos, check. Now I need people to actually like model for me. And I didn't know any models, so I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna use my friends. So I used 3 friends. I used my friend Ariel. We met back in high school. I used my friend Abena, we're childhood friends, and then I used my cousin Rhea. So I had 3 girls and then me, and then I rented out the studio that was like right by the airport. And I remember I was so excited. I don't think I'd ever been in like an actual photography studio before. So I remember I packed my bags. First I made mood boards for each girl. So I went on like Pinterest, probably just Twitter. Like I just found random photos that I liked and like made a concept for each girl. And I'd send it to them. I'd went over what I wanted them to wear, how I wanted their hair to look, the makeup to look, whatever. So I got to the studio early, and I remember when I first pulled up, I put in the address, I pull up, and I pull up, and it wasn't an actual studio. It was like a studio inside of his house, which wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting like some big industrial warehouse. And so I remember being a little disappointed, and I was like, is this even safe for me to be at this guy's house? But it was like broad daylight, so I was like, okay, it'll be fine. So knocked on the door. He introduced himself. He was super nice, super cool. Took me upstairs, and it was like a whole loft area upstairs that he had converted into a studio. So there was like a backdrop, I think 2 lights, like a water station. He was like, feel free to make yourself at home. His like the master bedroom was upstairs, and so he had told me like the girls could, like, he would not go in the room or the bathroom, and they could just change or do whatever they wanted in there. And so then I just start setting up. Soon my cousin and my friends come, and we just start taking pictures. And I remember I had the little Leica that I was using was like a point and shoot. It's not a proper like DSLR. And so I didn't really think to invest in like a more industrial or professional grade camera, I should say, because I'd already spent so much money on that small point and shoot. And so I remember I didn't realize the difference between like a full frame and a cropped sensor. So like the pictures just weren't visually looking the way that I had thought in my head. And so I had also told Cyan, the studio guy, that it was my first photo shoot. I was new to photography. So he was like, oh, if you want me to help you, I can. I don't want to like overstep, but if you need my help, just let me know. So I think I had called him from downstairs. He let me use his camera setup, and he was using a Nikon D850 at the time. That was like, I'm pretty sure it was a fairly new camera at that time. It was like their big, like new flagship DSLR. Very fancy. He had 2 prime lenses that he let me use. So he had really helped me with like composition. He helped me like change my settings around. And at the time I only had, I think, a 16, no, I think it was a 64 gigabyte SD card, but I'm still trigger happy now. I take like way too many shots. But back then, especially, I would take so many photos, just like click, 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 click. And I was shooting in RAW, and especially on his Nikon camera, those files are so big. So I remember filling up my card super fast, and he just kind of put me on game, like, okay, like this is the type of card you need to use. This is what you need in your kit. And so he really, really was such a huge help to me. I could not have pulled off that shoot without him, like no way. And I remember I had only rented it out for 2 hours, but I think we were his last booking of the day, and so he was like, stay as long as you guys need, like I'm gonna stay up, I don't have any other clients, so you can use the studio as long as you want. I think we had ended up, I want to say I was supposed to rent it from like 5 to 7 or something like that, and we ended up leaving around like close to midnight. Like that's how generous he was with his studio time, with his equipment. Like we were using up his room and everything. He was like the absolute best, and I still keep in touch with him today. The absolute best. I'm gonna put his Instagram up here. So taking some portraits of me, and then portraits of me and my friends as well. So when I got home from my pilot photo shoot, I remember I was like, okay, these pictures are great, but I was like, oh, I have no idea how to edit, like at all. And so then I started the YouTube over again instead of like learning. Well, I was still watching like videos on like how to just like do photography just to like sharpen my skills, because I was still pretty green, but I also had to start over from the ground up with the editing. So through my school, I got the whole like Adobe Creative Suite for free, like the licensing for that year. So I had downloaded Lightroom and Photoshop, and I was just playing around with it, really trying to hone in on color grading and like retouching, because I had shot RAW for all my photos, thinking everything, and I was like, okay, the Leica's cute for like, you know, that like Instagram pictures are just like stuff that's not that too serious, but if I really want to take photography serious as a craft, I need to really invest in a DSLR, and I was obsessed with his camera. And so I was like, okay, I need a Nikon D850. But what I didn't realize was the price tag on that Nikon D850 was very, very hefty. Like this was no little, I don't mean little, but like in comparison to that like little $800 that I paid for that Leica, like I would actually have to fork out like thousands of dollars for the body and actual lenses. I was like obsessively looking for this Nikon. I could find it, but I couldn't find one within my price range, because even the ones that were used, since it was still a fairly new camera, like they were still pretty high up there. And I remember I was like looking up like what would be the equivalent to a D850 in Canon. I found the Canon 5D Mark IV, and so I was looking for that. The prices were better since it was an older camera than the D850, and I finally found one at my local camp. It wasn't local to me, but I was in college at the time, so up in Chapel Hill, they had this camera store called Southeastern Camera, I think, and they had a Canon 5D Mark IV there. So I remember, okay, perfect. So I remember I'd sold my Leica to my sister, so I'd sold that, and then I think I got like a babysitting gig, and like I had like a few side jobs, and I got the money for it, and then I drove from Charlotte to Chapel Hill for a weekend. It was the summertime, so I had an apartment there, but I just moved home for the summer. So I went, bought the body, and then came back to Charlotte, was looking on Facebook for the lenses, and then I got my first 2 lenses, the 50mm 1.4 which I don't like the 50 millimeter lens, but that's a different story. And then the 85 1.8, I believe. In terms of marketing myself on social media, back in like 2019-ish, before I was even like interested in starting photography, at the time I was really into those digital cameras. This is also something, not to toot my own horn, that I was ahead of the curve on, because now everyone's doing the disposables, but back then I feel like not a lot of people were doing it. It wasn't that hip. And back then they used to be so much cheaper too. I'm pretty sure you could get a disposable for like $12 back, and that wasn't even that long ago. Like what, 2019 was like 5 years ago, but now they're like 25, $30 for that little disposable. Back then it was like $12. I remember I would always get them and take pictures, and then I would take them to CVS. They'd give me the CD, and I would just like transfer it onto my phone. And I was like, I want somewhere to put all these digitals. So I made a different photography page, and I called it a different Instagram page, and I called it Mona's Archive, and I would just post all my disposable photos on there. And so when I started photography 2 years later, I was like, okay, I want to like start sharing my work online. Maybe I should just use my Mona's Archive page. I archived all the film photos, and I started uploading my actual professional photography photos. I just kept shooting, honestly. So that's my advice to anyone who's starting out. Just, I would say, watch a lot of videos and shoot. And the videos can teach you a lot, but I would say you honestly learn most from just doing it yourself. So shoot, shoot, shoot. Just keep shooting. And also, it's really important to study. I feel like these days, people don't really study anymore. They just kind of pick up a camera and just like figure it out, which honestly isn't bad. There's nothing wrong with being self-taught. I consider myself self-taught because I learned from YouTube. So it's like, is anyone ever really self-taught? Because even if you don't go to school for something, like, you still learn a lot online. And I remember I would just force my friends like to model for me, like, especially during that summer. Some of my friends who didn't even live in my city, I would like make them come down, do photo shoots with them, and just practice, practice, practice. And then when I got to campus that fall, because I started my senior year, I just connected with people through, I think, Facebook and Instagram, like different like photographer and model groups. I would collaborate with people around the area and just like keep practicing, honestly. And then even people who are like I went to school with, who I didn't even know that well, like I would post my work and they'd be like, oh, I want to model for you. And I made some friends through that. And it was also just a good way of like practicing, getting exposure. And it was honestly just fun for me. Like, I would say it was like a side hobby that I would turn into my side hustle, that turned into a business and then a passion. So yeah, that's kind of how I started. That's pretty much my photography journey. Or at least the origins of it. There's so much more, but I can't believe it's been 3 years like that. It's so crazy to me. It's so crazy. Because it feels like just yesterday, like this whole new like era of my life is pretty new. And just to think that 2021 in general, like even if you take photography aside, to think that that was, the fact that I have to count on my fingers, the fact that that was 3 years ago is wild. Like the way that time flies. Where I'm at with my photography, I do know where I want to take it. I don't want to like publicly say yet exactly where. This might sound dumb, but I don't know. I do know where I want to take it, and I've been working on that for, I would say, like the past year and a half. But I'm just trying to be patient until I reach my first like big breaker milestone. But I say now I'm really trying to, what I struggle with now is like creating. Like sometimes I feel like I'll have a block. Right now I feel like I'm at a roadblock. Not I did hit a creative block, but I feel like now it's more like resources. Like, oh, I don't have like, honestly, like a lot of the money or like access to certain things to create the kind of work that I want to create right now. And then also it's so hard to find people to like model for me, especially now that I'm not in college. But I just need to get creative with the way that I approach things. And my goal is by the end of this year, I want to have executed 7 more photo shoots full on. So I need to, one, find people to actually pose for me, 2, come up with a concept, studio. Like, it's a lot that goes into it. But kind of my brief overview of my photography journey. I feel like I left out a lot more. Like, I've dabbled in so many different types. I've started out with portraits, thought I was just gonna stick to that. I've done events, I've done weddings. That's a whole nother beast. I think I'll make a whole separate video on that. And then, did I say concerts? I've done concerts too, so yes. Yeah, so that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, connect with me on Instagram. I'll put all my socials up here, and I will see you guys next time.